print a copy of the agenda for myself. I thought, oh, Julie always prints so many, I'm not going to waste my printer. She didn't print them today. I have no idea why. The one time I don't print one, but I can go make copies of it.
I counted on it. I'll print out mine because there's so many extra.
There you go.
So we have minutes though.
I just put that out for you.
I will go make copies.
Oh, goodness.
I know Joyce got it up for me, and I didn't print it, so.
Try not to print anything.
What time is it on here?
7:05.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's still electronic. I haven't heard from anyone else.
I have heard from Kathy, she's not going to be here, and I've heard from Scott, he's not going to be here.
I forgot to remind John.
And that makes for all present and accounted for. Our select representative is not here.
What do we need? We have enough, don't we?
Oh, yeah,
So we have a forum.
we're good.
Yes.
We have 5, and then we are supposed to have.
All right, let's call this thing to order. Checking through everybody.
Mhm.
Scott and Kathy aren't here, everybody else is here. Jim's not here. And voting, you'll be voting?
Yep.
And Jim, you'll be voting.
Okay,
Whoa,
long distance vote.
yeah, all right.
Don't vote twice.
Ooh, wait a minute, he's in Michigan.
It's not in Chicago.
It's allowed there, I think, yeah.
Am I allowed to vote from here?
You actually are allowed to vote there. The way the rules work is as long as we have a quorum.
But it doesn't count for Michigan, it counts for New Hampshire.
Right.
Recording in progress.
Ooh,
I didn't want to put any of that.
okay. Yeah, I hear you. All right. We have no public activity tonight, but we have public. Welcome, public. Kevin, you're going to join us in our conversation.
Sure.
But do you have any other comments that you would like to make prior to our meeting that are not on the agenda? Oh, okay, good. All right, we're already almost catching up here in time.
We're almost done.
Almost. All right, changes to planning board and zoning laws. So we nailed out a whole bunch of stuff.
Minutes?
Minutes, oh. What does it say minutes
To the
here? It doesn't have it. Oh, approved minutes, there it is, approved minutes. Sorry. All right. The only issue I had with the minutes was this punctuation.
Double check that. Spell my name right this time.
Yeah.
No problem.
Everything else is okay as long as that's
As
good.
long as
There
you
you
get
go.
the capital A there in the middle.
Oh.
I spell checked that.
Any changes to the minutes other than an editorial comment? Content, I guess, was okay. I wasn't here.
It was long, it was a long conversation.
Obviously.
Do I hear a motion to approve? Or do you have a discussion that's necessary? Motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second?
I'll second.
All right. We have low standards. It's okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. No, none opposed? Okay, no opposed, it was unanimous. All righty, and we got the public comments, no public comments. Changes to planning board and zoning laws, which you guys are already looking at. If I understood what was here, the intention was to try to get elderly housing and workforce housing on the same plane, or have the similar requirements for both. The best I can tell in my reading of it. Did anybody have a different reading of this?
It was, I think it was that if you have separate regulations for affordable and elderly, is that you need to bring them together. But we don't have any regulations for elderly housing, so I think it's moot
Well, we actually do.
in our zoning law.
Yes, we do. Section 10 has one segment that gives a qualification for elderly, which is different from workforce. And let's see, I'll get to it up here.
Section 10.
Yeah, section 10, and it's 10.2.2, eligible elderly household, an individual or couple in which the individual, or at least one person of the couple is 60 years of age or older, and who by income qualifies as a low or moderate income household as defined in this section. It is an elderly...
Right, but it's, the regulations are the same for elderly and for workforce.
Yeah, Scott sent me a note briefly on it, and I think if I understood his comment, that maybe his was a misreading of it. He implied that if one person met the requirements for low or moderate income, then they would qualify, and this one says it's lower moderate income household as defined in the section, which means it has to be for both.
The whole household.
The whole household, not one person. And so in that respect...
so it could be a couple of, one is 55 years old, the other one is 60.
Yes, it just simply allows for someone to, from an age perspective, to be a part. So we do have elderly household definitions, but you're right, that they're in the same ordinance. There is no separate deal for them versus the workforce or affordable housing. And I think, at least from my perspective, and that's why I said my first read of this was that we don't really have anything that we need to change.
Agreed.
And in effect, if I'm reading this correctly, the way the state requirements basically are more modeled than what we have compared to what others have. So they brought it up to our standard.
We set a standard.
We do set a standard sometimes. May not be equivalent, but it's a standard. So I'm thinking we don't need to do anything here. I don't think I see anything in the way the wording, again, I usually defer to Scott when he reads stuff. But I'm looking at this and I don't see that as an issue.
Is there any definition of a household having to be related at all?
Well, it says household as defined in this section. person or family, which is a household income. So I guess what's a family?
Should be a brother and sister, well, that's relatives, obviously.
Mhm.
But it would have to be a family, whatever that is.
And their combined income.
Yeah, total family income, or total household income.
So I,
Yeah.
family is kind of very flexible these days, but also fairly definable. Yeah, two people are totally unrelated, that probably wouldn't constitute a family, but,
Suppose they're living together, and they've been together for a while, it's just they're not married.
that could be family.
Yeah.
That's why I say it's flexible enough.
Bill, is there a definition for what lower or moderate income is?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's in the next section.
It's in, yeah.
10.2.3.
10.2.3, a person or family which has a household income meeting a particular percent of the median income adjusted for family size of Carroll County is published annually by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Low is up to 80%, moderate is up to 100% of the above cited median income level. So we don't set that, it's something that moves, and it's something that's published.
Okay, I understand, thanks.
And then what was number 73?
Sorry?
It was also number 73 that they referred to us.
Okay.
I gotta find out what 73 was, because in the email, it questions number 72,
Right.
so,
So, yeah, there were two things that
yeah, we have
we
two
were to
things,
consider. Yeah.
which requires more explicit written findings for planning boards and zoning boards.
We've written that, as I understood it, was that when you make a decision, you have to have the findings, you have to list the reasons, especially if you deny an application, you have to cite exactly why you're denying it, why the application does not meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And then and I don't know how that would be different from what you record in the minutes, whether it has to be a separate document. Is check with your attorney, your legal.
Yeah, is it satisfactory to just publish in the e-news and in your minutes?
Yeah, I don't have it, what they say.
It basically says that you have to document your results.
Your reasons for your decision. Yeah. Which I think we do anyway in the minutes.
Okay. I'm just wondering if the word explicit was new, and what's that definition? I mean,
Well, I wondered, Chris, do you have any sense of this? They weren't intending that every single time we make a vote that we have to publish it in the paper. This wasn't supposed to be a newspaper subsidization act, was it?
I honestly don't know. I don't know. Do you think I listen to everything?
Okay. We can always ask our legal schmiegel and see if he has any additional.
I didn't see anything here that said that, or did I miss something?
No, it doesn't say that, but it says you have to document them, and,
Yeah.
we
I
do.
just think that would be a town record. I don't think it would need it to be, but you could.
Yeah, but you look at some places where, there's a decision made, and we see it in the Daily Sun, where they actually put in a newspaper thing, is that they decided to do this, or decided to do that, or voted to do that. And others, if you look to try to find minutes for a planning board for a town, you can't find them.
Well,
They're not.
if you look at section 75, it would certainly make sense to document this if you're going to deny it, or if
Right,
you go beyond 65 days and you haven't made a decision, it automatically gets accepted. So I would think that, putting a timeline, at least documenting it on town records, you're going to have to do that.
Yeah.
If you want to publish it, I would think that would be probably a good idea, but I don't know that that's...
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if we need to do additional stuff.
I think we just have to make sure that we have documented, if we deny an application, documented exactly why we're denying it. And because, I think, because then, if whoever was denied, then he has grounds to appeal, and this is, X, Y, and Z, and if he makes modifications and,
Well, reasons why and within the timeline.
right.
Right,
And if we, and every time we extend a discussion of a particular application, it's usually in agreement with with the applicant.
Right.
Say,
Yeah, and we do have the timelines baked into our ZO, so, again, I'm thinking this is a no action item for us, other than we need to make sure that our minutes are accurately reflecting whatever it is we do.
Okay.
Well, don't we publish those minutes?
Yes.
Yes,
There
yeah,
you
that's
go.
what I'm saying, we already do this.
Yeah.
very close in the news.
Yeah, so it's already a fait accompli. Pardon my French.
Usually your French is more colorful. Okay, well, that was quick.
Good.
All right, I was not here last meeting, but if I understand it correctly, we stalled out on discussing the solar panel detail because we did not have a certain level of expertise sitting in the room. And I think we do now, maybe. How's it feel?
Let me answer some of the questions.
There you go. And I guess the question I have is, what was it that we stalled on? Are we not sure about what it is we'd like to accomplish? I mean, I read the minutes, so.
Right.
I think part of the problem is that we were just going off of this draft ordinance. And this document, it's partly draft ordinance and it's partly just information. This morning I went online and just said, okay, is there any other solar ordinances around it? And what can we look at? And came up with a number of documents which were very informative, and unfortunately I was unable to put it all together in an email to everybody, and I was gone all afternoon and didn't get back in time to do more with it. But there are a number of documents. One of them is information from the U.S. Department of Energy Technologies. I mean, it's a federal department, and it is very informative as to what the different types of ordinances are, as to what controls you can put on solar, and if you're even getting down to specifics like the height. If you want to restrict the height of a ground-mounted system, that it says, well, most ground-mounted systems are, maybe at most 15 feet high, or almost all of them are just 10 feet, or, this tracker, and giving a lot of the problems that have come up with solar ordinances and how to avoid them. And since I just read it through once quickly, I really can't summarize it at this point, but I think I was hopeful of being able to at least send out the link to everybody so we can all get, get up to speed, at least to a certain point.
Okay, so we'd like to benefit from that, but we're not going to this evening.
Okay, exactly.
What I think would be useful though, and just looking again at the minutes, if we could decide what it is we would, without thinking about a lot of detail, what it is we wish to actually allow, and not what we want to disallow, but what we think we'd like to allow. And then if we could, maybe get Kevin's input on some of the installations we've had and whether or not those installations fit within that, or if there's anything outside of that, or if you have anything that's unusual that you've seen or have been proposed that you look at and go, you guys are smoking the wrong kind of weed. And we need to maybe modify our thought process a little bit, because we're working from a little bit of disinformation for ourselves. And even if you have a home installation on your roof, you have one installation, you don't have a lot of ability to extrapolate from that. My sense was, when I read this and when we put this all together, that what we wanted to do was we wanted to limit the installations to things to power homes or cars, whatever people do with the electricity, but to residential installations as opposed to industrial ones or ones where people are providing a solar farm. Do we agree, disagree on that? Does anybody have a different view on that? Perceive that we should have something more than that? For example, if somebody is running a hotel, here we have a bunch of hotels, does that mean that they should have some better ability to put more in because they're a commercial unit, or?
Right, I mean,
What do you guys think?
for me, I thought we started this to, not to impinge on individual residential homes getting off the grid. That to me was the group.
That's for
Don't
sure.
want to, right? We're all in agreement that if you do it
And
for your
it's-
home,
The way it was described is, we have solar energy equipment is an accessory use, not a primary use. And if you have it on a building, rooftop, that's allowed. And what you can do is, it could be part of the building permit, which is what we want to do. Or do you have a separate solar permit that you need to get along with your building permit, sort of an extension, and that for the solar part of it, you have to meet certain criteria, and we can spell those out.
Most of the installations, I expect, are going to be add-ons to existing homes. Is
Mhm.
that
Right, so these accessory.
so? Yeah.
So, I mean, there's one point that was brought up last time. Someone said, well, if you say it's okay to put it on a structure, how about building a whole bunch of structures and just putting the solar on top of that? If you say that ask that the solar is not the primary use, but it is accessory to a primary use, such as residential, or it could be, like a hotel, if they've got a roof that they can put solar on, or a business, rooftop, and then also you can have ground mounted, and that one you've got to be a little bit more careful as to, what you're going to allow, how much ground coverage, how close to the setbacks, and those sorts of details.
Why can't it be a primary use? I would think it could be. I mean, you're going to be connected to the grid anyway, and you could get nothing but money back by doing that. So it could be your prime, heating source.
No, primary use in that you have 5 acres, and all that's on that is the solar farm.
Well, that would be a commercial thing, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
But
that's
that's just,
different.
that's a definition of primary.
That
It
would be the
is.
primary use.
Its first use is to produce income,
Okay.
not to.
And it's
be-
not accessory.
It's not associated, it's
on
not
top of it.
accessory to a building.
I didn't understand that, thank you.
Because we're learning new language.
Right.
Because we have examples in this town, there are, yours is a roof,
Ours is rooftop, yeah.
you know, so there's consideration that we talk about within the roof, say we leave residential, because we want people to be supported.
Right.
But where does it say that the roof can hold? You know, he wants to put an entire array of solar panels, but his roof just doesn't.
That's in the building code now, it has to
So
be engineered.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And
someone has to, they actually, the solar company installing it has to hire an engineer, and they actually, someone comes out, looks at it, and they actually say, this roof can, you know, add another 5 pounds per square foot to, you know, that's the average of the solar system, and they'll, you know, it's an engineer, they'll stamp like a set of plans. And that's happened in the last probably 3 years, where that's really been enforced, and it's happening there. And just in the last 7 years, solar has really changed big time from, you know, now they got rapid shutdown systems, which is required. And if you don't know what that is, that's if you have a solar system on a house, and just say the house catches fire, you got to be able to shut the power off so no power comes down from the solar panels.
Mm.
So now all the panels it's all in the actual panel itself, sends a signal, and no more power comes down to your
Kevin,
system.
just, if we're gonna focus on residential, which just sounds, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
The question I would have for you, and I think it's the one that makes your being here this evening good for both of us, is what things would you like to see in a zoning ordinance that you don't, you know, tools that you would like to have that currently aren't available simply by looking at the building code? Are there things that you look at when you are looking at, you know, someone wants to put out a solar system, and you're looking at it and saying, gee, I wish we had some rules around this or rules around that, because this is crazy.
Right.
Are there any things like that?
Yeah, it could happen, that's what I'm saying, you know, like you just mentioned, like hotels, you know, there's, you know, they want to put, I mean, they use a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, even if they did put them on the roof, they're not making enough power to really put a dent in there. Well, they put a, you know, good dent in the electric bill, put it that way. But, you know, the next thing is, you know, do they put, you know, 100 panels out in the backyard?
Right.
You know, this big array, you know, and then, you know, they're all set at like 45 or 40 something degrees, and, you know, the reflection at, you know, certain parts of the day, you know, people on the hill just see this like glow from the reflection. So that's, yeah, that's a.
So right now, there's nothing for them, you have no,
We don't, yeah, I don't see a lot of that, because most systems for residential homes now, they're built so they're not oversized. And one of the reasons is because, number one, the cost of all the equipment. And you want to make it so it's, you know, it takes care of most of your electric bill, you know, and, so and co-op, now, you know, we're in co-op district here. They, you know, every year it's less and less, you know, even share for the amount of power you make and what they give back to you. I think you see on your electric bill, you see like export, there's like 3 figures, and it's like how much you,
It's how much is the panels making, how
Yeah.
much does the co-op receive from you, and then how much do you receive from the co-op,
right,
number of kilowatt hours. And then it's all broken down into various, what your bill, I mean, everybody's bill
You'll
is
see it,
broken down as to the various components, taxes and other things. And if you look at it, the rate that you have to pay for the power you get from the co-op is higher than the rate per kilowatt hour that you get credit for.
Right, they buy it wholesale and they sell you at retail.
Yeah,
it used to be pretty good, like,
it used to be 1:1.
really like, I don't know, like 10 years ago, it was almost even for even.
Yeah.
And what you made a little extra, and wintertime came around, and they just gave it back to you.
Yeah, well,
Not anymore.
it's still is that way in that, you know, we, at least for us,
Yeah,
during the
all that
summer,
stuff.
we make
Yeah.
lots more than we use,
Mhm.
and so we end up with a couple $100 of credit, which then means that we don't have to start paying to the electric company until well into winter.
Which is nice. But I think that's one of the fears, you know, just that not to have this, you know, solar farm, you know, in certain areas of town, you know, maybe. 'Cause I think, like I said, most systems just for residential homes, usually it's on the roof. You know, I can understand they don't want to put on the roof because, I mean, the first thing they do is check like how the shingles are, or it's a metal roof. Because in 20, 25 years, you might need a new roof, so those panels might be still good. So they take them off and do the roof and put it back on.
Yep.
So otherwise they put them on, you know, like you said, ground mount or one of those pedestals that rotate, but those are very expensive. And those are,
Any issues with the ground mounts at all in terms of locating them or
well, they're
setbacks
structures,
or
so they
anything?
gotta be out of the setback. And, you know, most people, I mean, we just had one and they're gonna landscape around it, so you're not gonna see it. I mean, I've got, there's another one up on, there's a pretty big one up on Reno Road, but you can't see it. It's way tucked, you know, up the driveway and, big array, and you would never know it was there.
So are you asking these people to do landscaping or is it?
No, I'm not, no, but I think just, they kind of know that, you know, that they're gonna do that. You know, because their yard is very small.
Mhm.
You know, they have a septic system, they have there's an accessory dwelling unit too. So there's only like one spot to put this array.
Kevin, have you ever seen any of these panels blow off a roof? If you
No, I haven't, they're pretty good about installation.
you take a
But
look
it
at
could
those,
happen.
you take a look at those panels on the Conway Daily Sun. I mean, I don't know how they stay up there on
Yeah,
a brisk breeze. Those
right.
are very precarious.
I mean, you put them on top of like Presidential, this stuff way up there, you know, like, you know, show their
I have a sailing house.
Yeah, I mean, just this year, I think
Pile drive 80 feet into the ground.
I had 3 roofs up there that lost big amounts of shingles from one of those windstorms.
So we used to have a condo up, Kringle up top there and 80, 100 mile winds.
Oh, yeah.
18, 12,
Yeah.
15 tiles come off like 3 times a year, you know, it's like, okay.
But they're, you know, they figured that all in there with the mount systems and stuff. They're pretty rugged, you know, like engineer wise. I mean, even the ground ones, I'm surprised that the one they just put in there, they put these 5-foot rods in. And I asked them, I said, you guys ever any rocks? They just lucked out. You know, they have a special machine that drives them in. I guess where they were, it was just all sand, but other parts of Jackson. I said, yeah, what happens if you gotta put those in and you do hit rocks, they could excavate 4 footings, you know, like 4 feet down,
Yeah.
and then, you know, put their whole hardware system on and stuff and then backfill. So they're not going anywhere like you know, they're engineered pretty well.
Yeah, they have them look like roofing shingles too, don't they?
Yep, yeah, there's one on, there's actually one on, Tin Mine on the right.
And those stay
Yeah,
on.
they haven't had any problems, yeah. And I'll tell you another place we have them is, I mean, the whole entire 911 system on top of the tire roll, you know, where radio relay building up there. There's actually two systems. There's 5 panels that do the 911 from the sheriff's department, all solar, and then there's another one that has 3 panels. And one winter, the tower actually bent in half, but the panels, no problem, they stayed right there. So, yeah, they're pretty rugged, like if you install them right.
All right, so you have a building code that requires how they get installed.
Yep, install,
But you don't have necessarily a building code that says they have to be landscaped for.
No, nothing like that, or you know, like a ground mounted where they could go, you know.
But the ground mounts have to fit into a setback?
It can't be in a 25-foot setback.
Okay, so
or 50 foot
they're
from
already,
the road.
that's part of But is that part of what code then?
Because they're considered a structure.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so we already have something in
We
place.
do have something like that, yeah. But there's nothing on the amount of kilowatts. You know, if your house only uses, you know, an average house, let's say 1,000 square foot house, probably uses 15 kilowatts a day on average, maybe. You know, so you don't design a system that's 45 kilowatts, you know what I'm saying?
No,
And half of it's gotta be in the, you know, some on the roof, maybe some out in the yard.
or if
It's
you
all
do, you're
kill-
planning on buying a Tesla or something.
Oh, oh, that'd be extra power, right? But like I said, the solar companies are pretty good about calculating, you know, to make sure that everything works in future stuff too.
Yeah.
You know, you're not having a couple extra cars or whatever.
All right, so what don't we have? I mean, some of the things that I've looked at reading is that not necessarily on an installation do you have to worry about reflection, light reflection, but some of the things we've seen here do have a requirement for that.
Yeah, because I've had people call me like just had a concern about that, like neighbors. But actually, when the installation went in, it didn't become a problem. But it
Yeah.
could. You know,
It could be, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I think the way they're making panels is with the anti-glare.
Yeah. That's
Surfaces,
true
yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
You know.
you know, technology works. If it's cheaper and somebody has a large installation or a larger installation and it's gonna end up being $1,000 this way or that, you might choose to pick with everybody else and let it glare.
Can we put that in, because my thoughts are, and of course I'm going to houses in a minute here, but with automobiles, there's a car show and I think it's next month, and these cars, they have solar panels on the dash and the doors and the hood on the roof. Now, there may be siding someday, and if that siding, you've got something up on the mountain and it's reflecting, you know, that could be pretty unsightly during the day.
Okay. So there are potential opportunities for that, also for landscaping,
Yeah.
to make sure that it's not visible. I think that's something we don't have right now, but
Right.
people may do that just simply because they think it's a good thing to do, not necessarily because they have to.
Yeah. It could be based on too the cost, like you know, like 10% of the solar system you have to put towards landscaping. You know, around the array. It's like you know, ground mounted.
Obviously, don't have to put trees in front of them, but
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
One of the questions that has come up a lot is the kilowatts. Like, you know, is it appropriate? I think we talked about that. Is it 10? You know, what is there a limit, or does the solar installation companies kind of really kind of set
They
that?
usually base it on what your usage is. You know, they look at your electric bill for like the last maybe 2 years and say, you know, this is what you use, and you know, what's the possibility in the future? You know, are you adding you know a couple cars or something that you get charged? And then they base that whole system on that usage. So somewhere on, you know, on your roof, hopefully they can fit it all either on your roof or you know part of it on your roof, a little ground-mounted system, or.
but there's no practical limit, though. It just,
I haven't seen it.
other than cost, obviously cost.
There's some big houses in town here that use a lot of power, just because they're older houses. The heating systems have like, you know, like 8 circulating pumps. They're all constant speed circulating pumps, where now we all see variable speed, but that's a big energy saver. And then the lighting alone, you know, so the electric bills, I mean, up until like a month ago, because the power went way up. You know, these houses are at $500-600 a month for the electric bill. You know, whereas, you know, a small house, it's about 100, you know? So they use a lot of power. And I can think of a house in town here has a ground-mounted system, and I don't even think it takes care of half the electric bill, just because they didn't have enough room to put more solar panels arrays in. That's up by Eagle Mountain House. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Well, that's a good question. Is there, we generally have substantial lot size. We also have some lots that aren't quite so large.
Right.
And does that become an issue on the installation at all, or does it become a problem for you while you're trying to do your job of looking at that? Is that something that, again, I'm trying to think of what kinds of squirrely things there might be that we can help drive properly through the ordinance.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't see many smaller houses that, I mean, I think I think there's one in town that has like, it's a small house, but it's super energy efficient too, so it really need much.
I mean,
It's a solar, actually, it's a net zero house, I think. There's about 4 or 5 of them in town that they, you know, they have no electric bills, no heating bills, no hot water bills.
good stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Sarah Kimball's.
It's amazing. I
No,
know.
I mean, Sarah, oh, God.
For
Oh,
me,
I know, now I can't think of her name.
Is that a newer house?
Yeah, most of them are all newer houses, yeah. And, you know, there's the initial cost for all that.
Yeah.
Isberg,
But, you
yes.
know, once
Isberg's
it's
house.
installed,
Yeah,
and
that's,
I think
It's
the
great.
solar panels, you know, they're guaranteed, a lot of them are guaranteed for 20, 25 years. And the ones that we use on, actually we replaced them up on Summit, they're coming up on, I think they're coming up on 25 years old. They're still producing what they're rated at. So I think we're just gonna, because it's for 911, we're just gonna replace them anyway. But, you know, those were made 20, 25 years ago.
and then what do you do with the panels that you would remove?
That's a good question.
Well, that was the other question we were
I don't
debating.
know.
well, yeah, that was a big question.
I mean, there's people who would use those for, you know what I'm saying, for some
Secondhand?
source.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with solar batteries, like we replace the batteries up there, no matter what, every 5 years. Same thing because it's for 911, but they keep going for a number of years.
Are there exotic metals in panels? I thought there was just really silicone, which is not that exotic.
I mean, yeah, good question. I know the outputs has really changed because, you know, 2x4 panel, 25 years ago was rated at like 50 watts. Now, same size panel is almost 300 watts.
Right.
So,
So that was one thing, that because technology is progressing so much, is that put in your ordinance not the amount of the output, but do it as far as, you know, land coverage, size, you know, square footage. And
Either that
that's,
or percent of usage, something like 200% of an average bill or whatever. So that
you
you're,
have to,
you know, so you're maximizing at some level that's reasonable. Again, to avoid the accessory that's more primary than accessory.
Bill, earlier you had said that maybe saying what you can do with solar panels would be easier than what you can't do.
Right.
And I'm actually thinking sort of the opposite, because I think what you can do, a lot of that is probably part of the building codes as to what you can do. But what you can't do, again, is put them out on the road. Maybe it's easier to do the negatives than the positives. I'm not so sure, I just throw that out.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That just might be a little bit simpler.
All right.
I mean, there's something over a certain size you might want, you know, like site plan review, where, you know, you come to the planning board, you know, if someone's gonna put in like they're gonna put in like a small farm in, you know? There's nothing to stop that right now, correct, right? I just don't, I don't think
Well, that was the next level, after we determined what residential
okay,
was,
yeah,
and we figured out that was.
yeah.
All right, so if we hammer out some stuff that talks about some of the limits, however way you want to talk about them, plus or minus, but limits about what you can do, because that's kind of where my headset was, and you can do it either which way.
Right.
Either you can or you can't, but you're set within. If we hammer something out and things are going to change in this technology for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So anything we do, what we would appreciate is if you start running into some issues 3 years out, 2 years out,
Yep.
next year, after we get this in place and we come up short, please let us know.
Sure.
But what we'd like to do is put something together that meets some of the objections that we might have. I think landscaping might be one of them, reflection might be another one. Placement that is
Aesthetics, visual.
aesthetically gonna be a problem, possibly. And plus, obviously, there's the building code, which is going to be the primary.
Yeah, building and electrical code, both of them.
Yeah.
address that.
Those are gonna be the primary, and we don't really control those. We reference in our ZO that we expect that things are going to be built according to code.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay. And so any changes in that obviously are immediate to reflect into our zoning ordinance. I think our other part of our effort then would be to identify what things we don't want to allow in town. If we don't want to allow primary use, using your definition, and coming up with ways to restrict use as primary.
Well, the question is, do we want to allow small-scale solar farms or community-based solar systems? Or do you want to allow larger ones as long as they can't be seen? Because there are some, if you look at our town map as to all the parcels, there's some pretty big parcels that are up and out of the way. If somebody wanted to put a solar farm there, where do we want to draw the line as to how much land coverage? And do you say a certain percentage of the parcel can be covered with solar panels? That's, you're getting into a sticky area.
I wouldn't, in my case, I just am not aware of where you draw the line there at this point. I think we gotta learn more about it, so to speak. We're just scratching the surface. So I think to arbitrarily say on a 5-acre lot, you can't use more than 4 acres at this point wouldn't make
Right,
sense.
well, that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
we have to, that's the sort of thing that if you're going beyond, residential use.
At some point, you gotta face that.
Yeah,
And before it happens.
Right.
yes.
A question for you, Kevin. Does the building code restrict where you can put these things? For example, can you put them in a floodplain or?
No, you definitely can't put them in like a floodplain or, there's definitely setbacks from year-round water, a stream or, because it's a structure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking through, for example, to the comments that are being made, we have hotels, we have property in the middle of town, adjoining a park, and they decide that they're going to put in 2 acres because you are all saying this is what you'd like to consider.
Well, no, I'm just saying we have to.
Yeah, I know, but if you go to the worst case scenario.
Yeah, right.
And say, okay, it's in a commercial area, 2 acres, it doesn't cover the full lot, and it's 2 acres of solar panels in the middle of town. And you really want to see something like that happen, and you can excuse it if it's maybe sitting next to Huntley's house, or not because you don't care about Huntley. And that's the point, is like when you start thinking about things like this, you say, well, it's okay if it's not my backyard, but it's definitely a problem if it is, and so we can't do it on a NIMBY basis. We have to do it where it's going to apply, whether it's here or there. And, well, if I can't see it, it's out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, is that okay? Or is that really what you want?
Right.
In town, I think a good part of in town is floodplain.
It is.
Yeah.
I know that. That's why I asked the question at first.
But like the town, I think the town here has 172 panels. A lot of people don't even know that.
172 what?
Panels. Do you know?
Oh, the town has.
Yeah, I think there's 30 something on the building here.
Yeah,
And then up on the town garage, which you can't see,
yeah.
there's 100 and whatever, 130 or something like that. And they produce some serious power.
So it's a town garage and then this building.
Yeah, in the back here, yeah, it's just, there's like 30 in the back here. But the rest of them are all up on
Okay, so just
the
those
two
two
town
buildings.
garages, yeah.
But I think that the point that you just made is the important part. We don't see it,
That's right.
right?
You don't
And
see
that's,
Yep.
you know, but I think we had talked, going down the path that somebody has a farm,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want to make it a farm, wants to take 4 or 5 acres and
Yeah.
put solar panels. Right now, there would be nothing for you to stop
Right.
them to do that.
Yeah. I wonder if you could, because a lot of these big farms, it's outside money, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes they don't even own the land, but they make an agreement with the property owner.
Yep.
So I don't know if you could have something in there where, it's like, it'd be like owner occupied, whatever the word is.
Oh, we went down that path.
Only the owner, no outside, parties or something, I don't know.
Well, if we put an ordinance in place that says you can't do it, you can't do it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. And I guess the question that is being asked is, where do you set the limit?
Right, yeah.
And if you do set a limit, is that appropriate? Is it practical? And does it create an instance where you are preventing people from being able to make use of their property, or is it really about maintaining a standard of how
Aesthetics or.
how property is to be used? Generally speaking, we don't have commercial installations in residential areas. Most of our property here is residential. And so anything which would be primary, according to your definition, would be a commercial
Mhm.
installation. And therefore should be prohibited.
Because we have, well, that would be for the, in your district regulations.
Yeah.
But could you word it in a way that's for, not to your point, not primary, but it's the sizes of, like if Eagle wanted to take part of their golf course to create a, right,
To real estate up there.
right, to power the hotel. They want to reduce the thing. They could build that, but it's for their use.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they're trying to sell it, it's not
Right.
like somebody in a farm that sells off 20 acres of their, or leases 20 acres of their property and say, here, Mr. ABC company, come in and put a solar farm here for you to make money and I'll make money off the lease. To me, those are two different, they're potentially the same size, but for two different reasons. You know?
Yeah.
And yet if they put it on the rooftop, you don't care.
That's right.
There you go, yeah.
Right, if Eagle put it on the
Yeah, well,
top of the Eagle,
Yeah.
and they put it on top of the new carriage house,
Um,
we wouldn't care what they did.
What about short-term solar arrays? Oh, wait a minute, we don't have those?
Actually, just looking with our district regulations for the rural residential district, it gives the uses permitted, and there's 9 of them there, and none of them are solar.
Right.
No, it's solar farm. So if somebody has a big piece of land and wants to put a solar farm on it, in the rural residential district, you can't.
there you go.
It's not listed.
Yep. I would have to
And
agree.
village district is all those uses plus restaurants, businesses, hotels, motels, da-da-da-da.
So if we stay silent on it and we don't address it, then
Yeah.
that would prevent it from happening.
Right, because I think we're permissive, is that what we are? I forget.
I forgot.
In other words,
The two words don't,
we're one or the other, we're either,
we're the one that, it has to be, if it's not stated as you can do it, then you can't do it. We state what you can do.
How about if there's a commercial business already there in a residential
Mhm.
and it's change of use?
a good, for example, might be Black Mountain.
Yeah.
And say they decide they're gonna change that over, I don't know, pick a new kind of thing that they're going to do. They're gonna become a destination, place for, I don't know, kids outings or something, then they wanna put a big solar array in to power all the games that the kids play.
Well,
Sometimes
it certainly have southern exposure, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The snow melts.
You know, put in a water park, for example.
Right.
Say they wanted to put a water park in,
Mm.
as a for example. They gotta power all those pumps.
But I think there's wording that they have to come see the planning board first. I don't know what you guys would say, yes or no, or even how to stop it, you know what I'm saying? Because there's wording in there, like, if you, I forget how it's worded.
You mean for a change of use?
Yeah, for commercial entities, I forget where that is.
Or non-conforming?
Because the reason I asked that is because I had one of the
That could happen.
properties ask about,
Good idea.
you know, those tents they
Or you
set
put
up.
money into that.
You know, these
Or a
hotels are
story
setting
land.
up these tents like on platforms.
Like in
All you need is
You
a,
know, they call it, not
A hill.
glamping or something.
Oh, glamping.
Glamping, yeah, glamping,
Yeah, I can see
right.
it.
And I've already
Whitney
been
Hills
asked
is
that,
covered
I'm
with
like, well, they don't,
solar
for number one, they
panels.
don't have the septic capacity to add to, you know, to do that or whatever, so you guys didn't even, I didn't even send them to you yet, so I don't think it's gonna happen. But something like that, you know, where it's, you know, so-
What is allowed in the rural residential district is parks and conservation areas, with the exception of facilities or space primarily for tenting and trailers.
what was that?
No, it's like,
There's the last couple words.
The,
same thing in the rural.
with the exception of facilities or space primarily for tenting and trailers. So if you want
Oh, I
to
think
make,
I did come, I think Julie found that for me too, so you can't.
Trailers? Wow.
well, trailers like
Yeah.
RVs.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right. You can't have a,
That's good.
you can't have a a recreational trailer park here. So if somebody wants to bring their RV and camp out, it's got.
All right, so if Jackson Ski Touring wants to install snowmaking, which they are talking about doing, and they want to be off the grid to do that, and they want to install 60 solar panels on their property.
They have no property then.
Oh yeah, they do. They
Do
own, they own over 100 acres in town.
That's right, too, kind of 116. Yeah.
Including the farm there below the orchard,
Yeah.
which has
I
a
forgot-
wonderful
I'd
setting
forgotten about that.
for
Yeah.
solar. It's right near you, isn't it?
It's right down
No.
the road from you.
It's right down the street a
Oh,
little
that-
bit, yeah?
Oh, yeah, but they don't, no, that's all Campbell's property.
No, they
No,
own-
it's been
they own
sold
part
to
of it.
Jackson
Oh, do
Ski
they own
Touring.
part of it? Oh, gosh.
And they wanna
Yeah.
power the pumps to take the water out of the stream there and
Yeah, they can pay for the electric bill.
Yeah.
well, no, so they can be off the grid because there's no power.
Or off the grid, right?
Yeah, they can be totally off the grid. They don't even have to worry about
Yeah,
that.
And there would be nothing you could do to stop that.
not that I know of.
At present.
At present, yeah, I'd like to.
Well, that's what I'm
That's
saying.
why we-
These are the kinds of things,
That's why-
that's a forward-thinking kind of
Yeah.
use that might occur
Yep.
where we have to be looking at, well, how does solar play into this? And is this something that you want to allow or
Yeah,
not?
that's true.
And, it's like, Either you do or you don't. If you don't, then we just need to put it in the ordinance and say we don't want to do that.
And I think we're gonna see more and more of it, just because, I mean, you said everyone's electric bill just recently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna go up.
So it makes
and-
sense that, and it's not gonna go down. I mean, you think it's ever gonna be down where it was before? No.
Also,
It's gonna
inflation.
not, yeah, so like, it's like the stock market continuously going up and, goes down one day or 1 month.
Or 2 months,
Yeah.
3 months.
Yeah, and it could be 10 or 15 years from now, the board might be sitting here and trying to figure out how we get off the grid entirely as a town.
Mhm.
So we have zero emissions and what kind of solar and wind and other things that we are willing to
Mhm.
consider in order to accomplish that as part of our master plan.
But you think about, it, would we want to stop them from doing that? If it's done tastefully, if it's done with coverage, it's got the setback rules, it doesn't interfere with anybody, why would we want
I
to
think that's the
carry
whole
stuff?
thing, is to define what would be
The-
done.
Okay, the other point is that whenever you look in, if it's a mass installation, no matter where you are, you're gonna see that.
But maybe that's how you, quote, limit it, that it
Well,
has to.
who's gonna say what you can and can't see? It's like, okay, well, you can't see it unless you go walking up to the top of the orchard, and,
Reasonable.
or,
Well, it can't be seen from roadways, you can define. Roadways are.
Can that,
you
Not
can-
that I want to bring it back here, but would it become where then the abutters have a say in it?
well, I think they would, because
You
you
know?
want to have something in there that says you can't substantially alter somebody's view. And that's sort of wide open in general, and might be a start.
but let's talk about the Kendall property as a for example. That slope that goes down to the airfield
Mhm.
part of the, and there's an orchard there now, they took out about 1,000 rocks out of there. And it's beautiful exposure to the sun. It wouldn't take anybody's view out of the way, except unless you're at the Eagle Mountain House and looking across and
Mhm.
Well,
you'd say-
luckily, that exposure is mostly west, so that's not a good exposure.
except if you turn the panels this way.
Well,
That's a good spot.
good point, perpendicular panels, I never thought of that.
Like 500 panels.
Hey, Bill, wouldn't the state have something to say about this? I mean, it seems to me, every other day, there's some article in the paper about the state encouraging people to use solar. And,
Yeah, but
can we prohibit
yes,
business or?
yes, we can.
Because of a view?
Yes, we could.
If you're in a condo association, or you're in a homeowners association, it's very difficult to get permission from everybody else to put up a solar panel, very difficult. So, yeah, they may be talking about it, but getting from here to there is not quite that easy.
Look at the controversy on the internet.
Yeah, and again, we're not talking about prohibiting anybody from putting a residential installation, or we're not talking about anybody putting stuff on top of a roof. Well, we're
No,
talking.
I understand that, but what if the Snowflake Inn, for example, wanted to take all that property behind themselves and put in a solar array right in the middle of town?
Yeah.
It's floodplain.
Or as you mentioned, Black Mountain has got, two beautiful slopes facing the sun.
Yep.
But are we gonna run into the same problem if the state is pushing it? Are we gonna run into the same problem with lawsuits that we ran into with short-term rentals? We can't restrict it.
There's nothing on the books in the state right now that except for the building codes that restrict what you can and can't do.
Right, but if we put in an ordinance that says, whatever would happen on Black Mountain is not allowed in Jackson.
Well, again, if you say you don't allow for a primary use,
Right,
that would restrict it.
right.
We wouldn't have to say Black Mountain.
Right, no, I'm saying, but primary
You would
use.
just say, well, you say it the other way around, is that solar energy equipment that is accessory use is allowed.
But if I build something on that mountain,
Mhm.
that I want to put a giant array on the side of the mountain to support whatever I'm building,
Mhm.
that is an accessory, that's not a primary
Right.
use.
But if you look at the lots up there, they're 1/4 of 1 acre. There's no room to put any unless you actually do it on Black Mountain. So if you built a house on the side of Black and they sold lots for sale, they're extremely small lots, very small.
Right, but
But if Black Mountain sells
Well,
to a developer who wants to
Yeah.
then make it
No,
into a
that's-
solar farm.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's different versus I
That's
want
what I thought
to
you were
build my
talking
water
Yeah.
park.
yeah, but what if it just got sold to be a solar park?
Well, then it would fall into the category that it's a primary. And you said
Mhm.
if we
But
did.
you, that's how you would
Right.
legislate against that.
Right.
So I think we agree that it's okay to have a roof-mounted or ground-mounted array that is accessory to the residential use or building or an office or whatever. But where the sticking point is, how do you regulate a solar array that is a primary use? As in
Can
solar
you just
farm.
disallow it?
But that's gotta be in the statute someplace, isn't it?
Right.
That's what we're here for.
Right.
Right.
Right,
So
zoning
you would
ordinance, yeah.
disallow it by just saying what is allowed, because
Yeah.
that's the way our ordinance is written,
Right,
that solar is allowed as an accessory use.
Period.
period, done.
And sir,
Okay. Are we good with that as an approach?
I'm not sure it'll hold up, but
We won't worry about that.
we'll worry about that for the next generation of planning board.
Well, I think we can, do some background reading.
Yep.
Um,
Could you send us the links to those
I
articles?
will. I was gonna do that this afternoon, but as I say, I didn't get home.
I don't think you have to send us the whole article, just the link.
No, I'll send you the link and then you can decide, because on some of these, they go into a lot of verbiage about stuff like the bigger arrays, how industrial and so on, which wouldn't affect us, but the first part of it is just learning what the language is and what other places do. There's from Massachusetts is one, and then the one from the government, and it lists various, a lot of resources that you can go to get more information.
Speaking about the state of Massachusetts, I have hard copies if anybody would like them, or I can send them to you electronic. This is the model zoning for regulation of solar energy systems for the Department of Energy for the state of Massachusetts.
I'd like
That
to
was
see
one of
that.
the ones that,
Oh, you already.
I had Julie make copies for anybody who would want hard copies.
Here you go, Jim.
I can send it to you electronically if you want.
yeah, well,
Good
I'll
reading.
take one. Let me see.
We also have, there's a big organization in the Great Plains, which is where I am from. So I just made copies of just 2 of the states. Oh, I didn't know if anybody else wanted hard copies. I know you want yours electronic.
Good reading on the plane, Jim.
I also have 2 examples of Wisconsin
yeah,
solar,
I love to see it.
yeah.
and also Minnesota. They're very similar because they're all written by the Great Plains Institute. A lot of definitions. So
Same picture, too.
it's done by the same organization. They just reference state laws differently in each.
So you're gonna send
Right.
these electronically?
Right, and these were some of the references that in the article that I was reading.
I also printed out this map, and somehow on the screen it prints out the whole state of New Hampshire, but when I printed it, it cut off at Enfield and Meredith and Walsboro, so it's the northern part. This shows you how many have permitting and ordinances for solar power. White means they don't have any information on it.
Which means a whole bunch of places haven't touched this, including us.
Right? Oh yeah, we're right there.
We're white.
Yeah, we're right there. But I'm just saying that a lot of, I think, towns are probably struggling with this like we are.
Now, what do you consider like an association, like an association with a group of homes or condos? Could they have a big array? Because it would be their use.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to
But
consider.
they would have the same problem that we have, and that's as far as aesthetics, and that's why, again, in many of these cases where a homeowner or a condo owner has said, hey, I want to put solar panels on my roof, the hell you can. So they would be the same dilemma that we are.
Yeah, but they might vote to say they have, common land, like Black Mountain Meadows.
Right.
Strip it and put panels out there.
Okay, so if I'm hearing correctly, it sounds like what we need to be doing is working towards getting in the zoning ordinance what kinds of things we want or don't want relative to accessory use,
Mhm.
that we want to either limit or prohibit primary use. And identify that as a separate class that hopefully we avoid. And we'll have to figure that out, where that line is, if it's a jagged line or if it's a shear line or how that works, or if there's some sort of opportunity for stuff to bleed in or out one way or the other. And those are going to be the interesting parts of putting this together, I think. But yeah, we can, to your point, Jim, we can put something out there. We can give ourselves rules. That's what the planning board is supposed to do. It's supposed to put together local rules that inform people how they can use their property and stay within community standards. That's our whole job. And so this is a new activity, just like short-term rentals was a new activity, a new twist on things, and what do we do, how do we handle it, what kind of restrictions should we place on it, and how can we better allow Kevin to do his job. Really, seriously, it's like...
Right, yeah, so, everything's been pretty straightforward to this point, but I haven't seen someone come out with a big array,
Yeah.
super.
But it could happen
Oh,
tomorrow for all we
I
know.
know, yeah. Someone wants
It
to
happened
put
in Lowell.
200 panels on it.
In fact, it could happen before we vote on this
Okay.
next spring, because somebody wants to beat the timing on it.
You mentioned wind turbines and all too. The reason I just bring that up, I know we had one in town, and sometimes it's on, I haven't seen it on in like years, but maybe it is when it's
So
on.
the one in Tyrell?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
he's
haven't-
kinda
I know,
stopped
and I know
using
when
it.
it's running, people say they can hear it,
Yeah,
That's
not a big one.
And that's a pretty big unit, but, so same thing, and I know there's modern ones out there that are smaller, but you need some constant wind. And we do have that in the fall and winter, and not so much during summer.
But I don't think we should, under certain circumstances, a solar array wouldn't be that bad, depending on where it is, a commercial, depending on location.
Right.
And I just would hate to just eliminate them completely.
So let's do some reading and get ourselves informed as to problems that other communities have had and how they've gotten around them.
All right, any further discussion?
No, this was good.
Just after we close out the meeting, I'd just like 30 seconds to defend myself, okay?
Uh-oh.
Once it's closed, off the record.
Do I hear a motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So very quickly,